Hey there CNCers! Looking for a project to make some extra cash with your CNC? We're going to show you how to ride one of the hottest trends by engraving metal Stanley tumblers with your LongMill, Vortex, and LaserBeam that will keep your drinky drinks cold and your busy business hot. Let's go! We haven't done a video talking about specific real-world dollar amounts until now. We've suggested some ways of thinking about making products that we think are important for people wanting to make money with their CNCs, but we haven't crunched out a video that talks about specific product costs and what you can charge for them. I'm not going to break the cost down into the micro specifics like machine time, cost for electricity, bits, and so on. Those absolutely are real world factors, but that's an entire head scratching process onto itself. I'm keeping this fairly high level because let's face it, a lot of us get into CNCing for the first time as a hobby. So we'd be paying to run the machine anyways. Do we ultimately want to make money to pay off our machine? Of course we do. That's why we're making this video. But by and large, when we start out, it's not a business yet, it's a side hustle. So those super detailed broken down costs don't really apply right off the bat. Customizing metal tumblers is just one of many, many ways to make money with your CNC. So that's the product we're gonna focus on for this video. It's also one of the biggest tips I can give. Pay attention to trends. It's not always easy, but if you can take advantage of something that's trending, you might be able to cash in just a little bit more. Metal cups and tumblers have been popular since, well, kind of forever. Yeti, Stanley, and a bunch of the other names have been synonymous with the tumbler game for years. So why not add it to your arsenal to make some extra cash? They are a great gift for a plethora of occasions. They're great for hot or cold drinks, so they are good year-round for those of us who enjoy 4 seasons. And they're durable as heck, so they're a great investment. The bottom line on customizing means you can typically charge more, but there definitely is a fine line to follow when it comes to spending time customizing. Which leads to tip number 2. Custom to a degree. You can easily get lost in the rabbit hole of spending way too much time creating the design, which will quickly eat into your profits. As you can see right here, I spent far too much time on this design, but it was kind of a personal / work project, so I let it slide. My suggestion though? Have a stock library of images and fonts for people to choose from. These libraries can be anything from simple graphics and themes to complex scenes that wrap all the way around the entire tumbler. That way the customer gets something custom they want, and you don't spend your profits creating one-of-a-kind pieces of art for each and every one. This is where the kind of bread and butter of customizing can really come into play. Look around at things that are selling regularly and have those options in your stock library. Sports teams, coaches, teachers and staff, corporate or business gifts. While these aren't trendy per se, they are things that people regularly look for when shopping for gifts, which could mean regular or repeat business for you. I am not going to stand here and say I have all the answers, but those are a few tips for when you're starting out your side hustle that might help you along. Now let's get dirty and talk about actual dollars. This giant 40-ounce Stanley tumbler costs about 60 bucks Canadian or 40 US. If you look around on Etsy and other similar sites, the customized versions of these things can go for pretty big dollars. A simple name? Bam! 20 to 30 bucks on top of the cost of the tumbler. A name and some graphics? 40 to 80 bucks. And if you want to get into the big leagues and start doing full wraps, anywhere from 100 bucks up on top of the cost of the cup. So let's break this down just a little bit. Let's say you buy a LongMill Mark 2.5 30 by 30, a Vortex, and a LaserBeam. After tax, you're about 3,400 Canadian or 2,500 US in at the time of this video. If a cup costs about 60 Canadian or 40 US and you can make a profit of, let's say, 40 bucks Canadian or 30 bucks US a cup, how many cups do you have to engrave to pay off your machine? Let me tell you, it's about 85 tumblers. That's a lot of tumblers, Scott. Yeah, but if you average 3, maybe 4 per week, you've got your machine paid off in give or take 6 months. Does this mean you're going to buy all the gear and instantly hit the jackpot? No, of course it doesn't. But it does, however, show you that a little hard work, some seat time, you can indeed pay off your little investment. Think about all the teachers, coaches, bosses, birthdays, baby showers, graduations, retirements, and corporate gifts that are just begging to have something like this made for them. Well, maybe not something like this, but something like this. And that's if you're just doing simple designs. Imagine if you deep dive this and start making 100 bucks per tumbler. Let me tell you, at 100 bucks a tumbler, you could pay off your machine in just a couple months. How awesome is that? It doesn't take long to see how quickly these can add up, especially when you start to get some word of mouth going about the great work that you do. All right, now that we've established this whole tumbler idea is actually potentially doable, let's get into the fun part and engrave our Stanley. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about finding and assembling vectors to use. If that's something you'd like me to spend some more time on, drop a comment down below and we'll be sure to share some of our tips. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to stay in the realm of the, let's say, mid-range $50 to $60 customizations versus the full crazy wraps. I want to show you how easy it is to turn your Stanley into a fancy tumbler so you can turn your CNC into a money-making machine. There really isn't a ton to do in Lightburn to make this whole thing happen, which is another good reason why tumblers are a good moneymaker. Setup time can be a killer, so anything you can do to streamline your process is a good thing. First things first, I'm going to remove the handle on the tumbler and tape the whole thing up. I am doing 2 layers of tape for the reason that it protects the tumbler during testing and it allows me to sketch on the tumbler to get my design placement correct. I'm also marking approximately where the Stanley logo is so I can translate that into Lightburn. Turn rotary mode on. This little icon here is a nice shortcut to get to the rotary settings. Check. Enable rotary, check. Y-axis, not a check, but select. 37.5 millimeters per rotation seems to work nicely. If you're not exactly sure how I got that number, check out the baseball bat video I just did. Just a little heads up, don't worry when you load your Lightburn file in G-Center if it looks a little squashed. I found a fabric tape measure is the easiest way to find measurements for these types of objects. I'm going to wrap my design all the way around the tumbler minus the thickness of the handle, which gives me about 11.5 inches of space to play with. The top part of the tumbler where I want the design is approximately 5 inches tall. So now I know what kind of dimensions I can design to. It's important to get these settings correct because Lightburn is going to use these numbers to calculate and create your file to burn your design. That's because these settings compensate and adjust the file for the curvature of the tumbler so when it engraves, it does it properly. I'm going to create a bounding box. That's the dimensions that I just measured for the tumbler. You can see here I've also added in some placeholders for the handle tabs and the Stanley logo to help me position the graphics better. These placeholders are on the T1 framing layer, so they won't show up when I save my file, but they're there in Lightburn. For my design, I just happen to have this epic Kraken design that I'm going to import now. You can edit graphics in Lightburn, and if they're simple, no big deal. But if you're going to be doing something as intense as I'm doing for this one, you might want to do it in a software that's specifically designed for that purpose, like Illustrator or Inkscape. I want all my graphics on this to be fills, so I'm going to select them all and place them on the same layer. And to pay tribute to one of my favorite movie characters, Captain Jack Sparrow, I'll add a little texty something to my design. Savvy? I tinkered with the settings and here's what I found worked pretty well to engrave the tumbler right down to the metal. My speed, 20 millimeters per second. Max power, 100. Mode, fill. Line interval, 0.1. This is a setting where you may want to mess around a little bit. The smaller the number, the more the laser passes overlap and the cleaner it can come out, at the cost of time. So be careful how far you push this. Number of passes, I will go with just 1 because I can always run it a second time if I really need to. I typically leave rotating the design to the last step because I just find it easier to work on as I go. Grab everything including the dimension placeholders and rotate either 90 or minus 90 depending on your design. For the orientation of my design, I want the job origin to be the bottom right in this case. This is a super handy feature to use depending on your design. I want to be accurate with where the bottom of my design begins, so I'd prefer to go from the bottom up towards the top of the tumbler. Design placement is probably one of the more tricky parts of the whole process. That's why we do the tape and test. I typically go back and forth between the tumbler and Lightburn, taking and marking measurements on the tumbler's tape to ensure the design is placed right where I want it. Once you've double-checked the design placement, check the preview to make sure you're happy with everything, save your NC file, and we're ready to rock and roll. So you can see that if you've got people picking from a stock library of graphics and fonts, and you've got your processes in place, it won't take long to bang out the designs for these tumblers. To mount your tumbler, you've got a few different options. There are lots of places that sell 3D printed adapters to get your tumbler set on your Vortex. If you think you're going to do a ton of these, I would say it is a very worthwhile investment to buy one or print it yourself if you have the ability. They are about 20 to 30 bucks, but they will save you a ton of headaches in the long run. For me, I installed the larger set of jaws on my Vortex and I was able to locate them past the threaded part of the inside of the tumbler so they made contact with the flat surface. I measured from the edge of the cup to the edge of the back block of the 3-jaw chuck to make sure the distance was even. I opened the jaws until they held the tumbler relatively firmly in place. We're not trying to launch a rocket into orbit here, so I didn't use my usual gorilla strength to tighten it. I did, however, use some elastics around the jaws to give me a tiny bit of play to make adjustments and to make sure I don't damage the inside of the tumbler. Tape or foam could serve the same purpose. Then I gave it a spin with G-Center to make sure it was rotating evenly, and if you really want to fine tune it, you can bust out a level to make sure the tumbler is level as well. Now we need to get the laser lined up and focused. If you're not 100% sure on how to do this, check out the Cottage Country CNC bat or coaster videos. In them, I go through step by step on getting everything lined up. A word of caution here, folks. I learned these not the hard way, but I certainly had to, learn. Make sure you leave enough Z-height clearance for the handle tabs to rotate a full 360 degrees. I have my laser set approximately 1.5 millimeters higher than I usually would, and I took the collet off my router and my dust shoe bracket just to ensure there was enough clearance all the way around the tumbler. Once you've got all these steps done, it's finally time to do a test. There are lots of people out there that talk about blue painter's tape for testing, but I found green tape worked better for me. I don't know why, it just did. For my test, I had the driver dip switch set to 1, and my Lightburn settings turned down just a little bit, 20 millimeters per second and 60 power. In Lightburn, I traced the entire design and then ran a super quick outline just for placement testing. Run your test. If you need to make tweaks, go for it and run your tests again. Once you're happy across the board, it's time to peel off that tape and make this design permanent. Alrighty, that's a lot of info packed into just one video. I'm pretty sure talking about costs and making money is going to get some attention in the comments. Just remember, we are all here to learn, so let's make sure that we keep our comments nice. I definitely don't have all of the answers, but hopefully some of the info I shared will inspire you on your CNC journey. Make sure you hashtag and post your projects for everyone to see. I'm pretty chuffed that I can strut around with this mega mug and profess my adoration for Captain Jack. Maybe I can use my status as an internet influencer to get Johnny Depp himself to give a shout out to my Titanic tribute tumbler. I clearly do not believe for one single second that I am an influencer. Let's make that clear. If you've got any questions, please be sure to release the Kraken down below and I will be sure to answer as many questions as I can. Until the next one, we'll see you around the CNC. CNC? Get it? And I know it's a lake, I tried.